Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the weekly History Chaos podcast. This is episode 4. If you're a returning watcher or listener, in this case, unless you're watching on YouTube, I want to tell you thank you. If you're a new listener or watcher, thank you for checking out this podcast. We draw random topics on the show about history and we talk about them. We have been focused on World War II lately just because that's what I'm most passionate about. But today's episode, I want to do it a little different. Before I dive into the history, I probably should have done this episode 1, but I want to give you a little bit of background about who I am. So, my full name, John Dylan Carson. I'm 28 years old. I'll actually be 29 next April or next year in April. Grew up loving history, have always been fanatical about it, and it's actually my parents' fault. The reason why I like history. So, let me name a couple things. The first thing is in school, I hated math. I hated English. Both of those, I speak English, but I hated both. And history was always the one class I did good in. I like to read. I'd actually read ahead, if that makes sense. But growing up, I've pretty much had a TV in my room most of my life, and that's kind of like my parents would let me watch TV at night and stuff as I go to bed. Well, the rule was, at night I could only watch educational stuff, so they would leave on the Science Channel, History Channel, the Military Channel. They would leave these on. Well, little did they know I actually grew an interest in those, so I'd watch them. So I would stay up really late, and that's pretty much what got me into it as a child. And then I learned a lot then, but as I got older and I had more access with the internet and things like that, it really always became a big hobby of mine just because I was always so interested in it. Other background info about me: I'm Choctaw. I'm Native American. I've had a CDIB card my entire life, and most of my family does in general. I have some family members who've served in the military. I have one family member who served in World War II. He was in the invasion of Normandy. He fought at D-Day. He was actually injured on D-Day and was sent back to the UK. He healed up in a hospital for about 6 weeks. He went back over to Normandy, fought in the hedgerows, and he was shot and killed over there the second time. He received a Purple Heart for that first incident, and I believe he received something else, I think, for the second one, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't think he received the Purple Heart twice, but he did die in combat, and he was injured before. Um, so yeah, I just want to give everybody here a little bit of context about who I am, some other info about me. I'm born and raised in Oklahoma. I live in Arkansas now. I work as a field technician in natural gas. It's actually on a landfill. So you think trash and stuff, things like that. So when city trash is taken out, it breaks down. And as it breaks down, it produces methane. And we take that methane and we sell it for energy. And we have a process we use. So I do that as my day job. My side hobbies and stuff are going to be my TikTok account, which I go by DOS Bear on there, DASSBEAR. I make history content on there as well. Man, today I'm just mispronouncing everything. So I make history content on there as well. And I do make some stuff for my YouTube. A lot of it, my TikTok does go straight from my TikTok to my YouTube. But like this podcast is on my YouTube in video format. And then other postings I have on there that are just YouTube only. It just kind of depends on the length of the video, because TikTok is made for shorter stuff. And then obviously my other side thing is this podcast right here, which I'm actively looking for guests. I've reached out to a couple people right now. Hopefully for my 5th episode, I have a guest on here. I'm really, really hoping to. I'm going to try my best this week to find someone who'd be really cool to have on the show. I'm looking at professors. I'm looking at anyone like that would have an interest in talking about history, that would give me a different insight and opinion, and maybe have topics that they would be really interested in talking about that, they've just been chomping at the bit to go over. So yeah, I should have done this episode 1, but I hope everyone here has a better knowledge of who I am and appreciation for who I am, and maybe they get more out of this podcast now and get more out of my other, social media and entertainment accounts. But let's get on to the actual podcast here. I know y'all are probably tired of talking about myself here, but we're going to start out with some randomly drawn topics. And I've got to give a shout out to, let me pull up his name real quick, make sure I get it right. Give a shout out to Rob DeFlob on my Discord channel. He gave me a bunch of topic ideas that I could talk about, and I've pulled from those mainly for today's episode. So I want to tell him thank you. He has used my podcast for homework assignments and has listened to them and given me feedback, and I appreciate it. So let's draw our first topic here. Just a heads up, I'm gonna butcher a lot of pronunciations today. Like, gonna happen because I don't know. Today's just not a day for me to pronounce things. So the first topic here is gonna be Yugoslavia, Slavia. Probably pronouncing this completely wrong. It's pretty much Yugoslavia is the main topic here. It's talking about when they were invaded and I guess the whole circumstance around them in World War II. So I guess some context in it. Whenever Italy was taking Greece and they were looking toward the Balkan area and they were coming up with the Versailles Treaty. I guess Germany was coming up with their own treaty in that area, and they were talking to all the neighboring nations, and they were getting to sign the Tripartite Pact. I'm pronouncing all these wrong, but anyway, they were making them sign this pact, pretty much bringing them into the Axis is what they were doing. So they bring these nations into the Axis, making them allies, and that's kind of their goal. Well, when they were doing this, Yugo was actually going to join them. So Yugo, I'm going to use Yugo for short. Yugo is going to join the Axis, just like Hungary was, Romania was, Bulgaria was. All these nations were going to join the Axis. Well, when Yugo went to join, a leading general within the Yugo did not want this to happen, didn't want any of this. And Yugo actually already joined. They already signed the deal. Or it was already a done deal. Well, a coup happened, and Yugo got taken over, and it became pretty much an enemy of Germany instantly. And so right after this happened, the German Empire's government, or the German government at the time, was very upset, and Italy invaded, Germany invaded, and Hungary invaded. So 3 nations right off the bat invaded. They didn't fight very long at all. It went from April 6th to April 19th, and it wasn't because they actually fought that long. It was just it took so long for the troops to get across the country. And the last nation to actually invade Yugo was Bulgaria. And that happened literally on the 19th, and that's kind of sealed the deal. And what happened is northwestern Yugo kind of went to Germany, north closer to Hungary went to Hungary, and everything along that southwestern area toward the coast and stuff went to Italy. And then if you look toward the east, like Macedonia and stuff, that went to Bulgaria. They partitioned up the country, they split it up. But it was kind of just an odd thing because, Yugo was set to become an Axis member, an Axis nation, and then last second because of a coup ended up becoming an enemy. And just kind of funny how that all worked out. Okay, let's move on to our next topic so I can keep butchering words. Let's see what we get here. It's a big one. A lot of key points on this one. The invasion of the Low Countries, or Lowlands, however you want to go by it. I've heard both terms, but for some reason when I looked it up, I always see Low Countries. Maybe it's the way it's translated. But what that's talking about is in World War II, whenever Germany invaded Netherlands, Belgium, France, Luxembourg, that entire area, so the lowland countries, and pretty much what happened there. So Germany invaded Belgium. Well, they invaded Luxembourg. Luxembourg was one day. They invaded Luxembourg on May 10th. It was literally one single day, and Luxembourg was gone. They got taken out really fast. Which, they're a small nation. They're a city-state nation. You can't expect them to stand up to a nation that's literally 1,000 Luxembourgs put together. It's unrealistic. But they took them out first. Just took that little piece of land. They were trying to get around the Maginot Line in France so that they could invade. So that was kind of their goal there. They're just trying to take some more land, outmaneuver around France. And then after that, they invaded. I guess Luxembourg fell on the 10th. That's when the invasion started. They fell first. Netherlands was next on the list. They were all pretty much invaded at the same time. Netherlands was the next to capitulate on the 14th. Netherlands is kind of a weird one because they wasn't. So German opinions of the lowland countries was actually really good. Like German citizens, German people, they liked the nations. They didn't have any issue. They didn't have an issue with Luxembourg, Belgium, or Netherlands. Really, they really didn't, and especially Netherlands. Netherlands and Germany had a very close relationship, and they didn't want to. The citizens felt bad about going in. Even the German soldiers, whenever everything kind of worked out in the invasion, they were not like pillaging. They were not, they were very polite. Even whenever they were not advancing, they would go into nearby shops and buy like chocolate and things like that using their money. I mean, they were very civilized about it. And they didn't want to like, I guess they didn't want to, I say, do the invasion. And they even try to get around actually as much of the fighting. The Mustache Man had a very odd idea for World War II that he had a strategy and tactic where he would send, I guess I'm trying to figure the right word here, ambassadors or points of contact, pretty much for the government, and mainly targeted for these royal nations that have like a royalty, things like that, and sending them in, offering, hey, we're coming in to protect you from Franco-British aggression. That's why we're coming in. We're not coming in to make you an enemy. We're not coming in, we don't like you. We're coming in because we want to protect you from Franco-British aggression. And that did exist. So it's kind of odd to think about it, but like France and UK had some really messed up plans that almost happened. They almost went through with them, but they didn't. Like France actually thought about invading Belgium so that they could, move up their line. The British actually thought about invading Netherlands so they could have a foothold in the area themselves and have their troops in position. There was a lot of other plans that almost came to fruition and happened that it just didn't work out. I mean, like it was a very odd time. So both sides were looking to take these nations to help combat the other side. So it's kind of odd. With Belgium, they had the largest tank battle in history at the time. So there hadn't been very many large tank battles. Obviously, World War I wasn't huge on tanks. So it was pretty easy to have the largest tank battle in history. And it was also the first use of paratroopers was in Belgium. There was some use, I believe, in the Netherlands, but not no, actually, no, I'm wrong. There was only Belgium. They did not use paratroopers in Netherlands. What they used in Netherlands was gliders, because their original plan was they were going to land gliders and troops onto airfields and try to take Netherlands as quickly as possible. And mainly they're trying to get to the royalty. Queen Wilhelmina. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I think I actually wrote it down on this to make sure I said it right. Queen Wilhelmina. Yeah, definitely. If anyone from the Netherlands is on here, I'm sorry. But they were trying to get to her so they could pretty much force a surrender. And they really didn't know that governments in exile were going to be a thing. And that ended up happening a lot. And so they could not predict the future on that. She was evacuated. Her family was evacuated like the moment the war started, like the day of, like the 10th, they were gone. She evacuated last. I mean, obviously, she wanted to be there. And the Germans pretty much pushed in so fast and so quick that there wasn't really anything the Low Countries could do about it. They just kept pushing in, taking land, and even once the Queen was evacuated, even with Belgium, once they evacuated their government, they pretty much said, "Hey, y'all can surrender." They didn't want the loss of life to go up, and they also did not want to push Germany into a position where they were going to start taking it out on the citizens, like bombings and stuff like that, because a lot of it's been very controlled at this point. So there were a lot of surrender orders. The surrender orders did not include their navies, so the navies were free to go to the UK, and the UK accepted those ships in and used them throughout World War II. And also the government members got to escape, and they formed governments in exile to organize resistance and for the ability to eventually retake their land at that time. But yeah, this is a very quick war. It went from all three of these nations were capitulated between May 10th and May 28th. Wait, May 10th, May 20th. Yeah, May 10th, May 28th, and I believe France fell April 19th. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. because I had to verify to make sure. But it happened very quickly. This is like 6 weeks. Like this entire war was like, it happened, like this battle happened like 6 weeks. All these nations gone. So it was very, very quick. But again, it's an odd one because Germany went in with a lot of respect for the Low Countries, and they really wasn't. The Low Countries were not given very much respect from the Allies, especially from the UK. There's actually a quote directly from UK because the UK abandoned the Netherlands and Belgium troops at one point, and even the Belgium and the Netherlands troops filled in lines to let the UK troops pull out and retreat and get on their ships and leave. They didn't want them, to get captured, surrounded, things like that. And after the UK troops evacuated from Belgium, there's actually a quote, where they say they don't care about the Bells. I think they call them the Bells, or I can't remember what they call them. They said, we don't care about them. It's just an odd time. I know it's really easy to think of World War II and think, oh, the Allies, the good guys and stuff, but nations do and say, and very messed up things happen. And actually, there's some more topics in here that we're going to get to. I can go a little bit deeper in that with UK. Let's pull our next topic out. I need to buy me something like little metal beads or something sound better for the podcast. Like, digging through there. If anybody can think of anything that would be really cool, like sound effect wise. Italian Navy, World War II. The Italian Navy is not talked about very much in World War II. And I wrote down the name of this because I know I'm going to mispronounce it if I don't actively look at it. And I'm still going to mispronounce it. But the Regia Marina, Royal Navy. So the Italian Royal Navy at the start of World War II was the 5th largest navy in the world. But don't let that fool you. It was not a very good navy because it was outdated. They did not have radar, sonar. They were very, very outdated fleet. They did not have that many battleships, and the battleships they did have were not as good as like the UK's battleships. So they were not as good. Also, their tactics. But before I get to that, let's do some other stuff, background with them. So due to Benito Mussolini, he had this saying that, Mare Nostrum, either Mare Nostrum or Mare Nostrum, our sea. And that's what he called the Mediterranean because he believed that they will control every bit of it. That's their sea. They're going to have it. So yeah, he was very fanatical on the Navy. And the truth is, Italy just didn't have. They had the 5th largest, but they didn't have the resources to build new ships. They had very limited oil and fuel. They didn't have the resources to even upgrade the ships they had. Their ships were mainly destroyers, not even very many cruisers, mainly destroyers and small boats. Had some cruisers, some battleships. They had like six battleships, or dreadnoughts even at the time they'd call them, because they were just so outdated. They really wasn't what you would call a modern battleship. But they thought that with their navy they could control the Mediterranean, and they did have some success, but they made a lot of key decisions which led to their defeat. And they just, first off, when you're a nation that has limited supplies, you have got to take risks. You have got to go big or go home situation, because you can't fight a war of attrition. You can't take your time, because every day that you're not capitalizing with what you have, your resource becoming more and more scarce. And you look at it, like I think by 42 even, they couldn't even like leave port hardly because their ships didn't have fuel. They didn't have oil. They couldn't run. So at the outset of the war, there were some key islands and places they didn't take. They didn't naval invade because they believed them to be too heavily defended, and the UK didn't even have hardly anything there. The other thing is on engagements, because they were not as developed technologically, at night they just lost because they didn't have radar. So everything they saw had to do was visually, and the enemy with sonar and radar and all this other advanced technology, they could engage them at night, and the Italians couldn't engage back. So the Italians took massive losses at night. The other issue was their tactics. So their small ships had really great success. They had really great small ships, and they pulled off some really big damages. Even their submarines were actually really good. They took out some convoys. They did some good work. But their problem with their main fleet was that their admiral could not pretty much control the fleet and order it to engage in combat and things like that. Everything was very strict communication-wise, so he could do nothing without permission from headquarters, and which means that he would have to relay what he's requesting, the situation. Headquarters would have to meet about it, talk about it, go through their strategies or planning, get back to him. And so there was a big delay. He couldn't capitalize on key moments in the Mediterranean to make use of that navy. And honestly, it's Italy's navy should have been able to control the Mediterranean. I mean, the UK Navy had its hands full, convoy escorts, the whole world. I mean, the UK, the British Empire is large. I mean, like they need ships everywhere, and Italy could have very much focused, but other than that, mainly just outdated tech wise, limited supplies, doomed from the beginning, not capitalized on. A lot of this is just World War One style thinking, and what isn't that is going to be responsible with their leader. He just wasn't. He was too fanatical, and he didn't. I guess to me, he just wasn't smart enough. He really just wasn't there enough to make the right decisions. Let's see what else we got in here. The Spanish Civil War. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, the Spanish Civil War happened before World War II, and it's still, I would say it's still considered within the talk of World War II because the people and the nations that took part in the Spanish Civil War. So, France helped out some, Mexico helped out some, Portugal helped out some, and well, obviously Soviet Union helped out some. And then on the other side of it, helping out the nationalists, which those nations helped out the Republican side, which Republican side was really more like the communist side. They call themselves Republican, but they weren't really democracy. They were the communist side pretty much, mainly. The other side was the nationalist side in the Civil War, which was helped out by Italy, Germany. Oh gosh, there's another one I can't think of. I'll come back to it. I know I'm going to think of it here eventually. But the biggest thing with the Spanish Civil War and why it's so important is it was a giant proving ground. Now, it wasn't a proving ground on tactics, obviously, but it was a proving ground for new technology. Like, did this fighter work? Was this a good fighter? Was this a good bomber? Was this a good tank? And which Spain's very mountainous, so there wasn't very many tanks there, tank battles in general. But they got to test out key technology. And I mean, it was a bloody conflict. And another fun fact about the Spanish Civil War is it should have ended really fast. So pretty much whenever the uprising happened, the start of the Spanish Civil War, it happened on the 18th. And I don't know why they decided this, but I don't know exactly why they decided this, but they decided that on the 18th it would start, and they were mainly going to start in Morocco. They wanted to take Morocco, that African colony area, and then after it went from Morocco, they were then going to expand the revolts in other parts of Spain. Well, when this pretty much happened, because it was delayed, it allowed both sides time to actually make it into a war, and it shouldn't have got that far, but it did get that far. And if the uprising on the 18th would have happened all across Spain at the same time, instead of having it staggered out one day and then a couple days and then, the way it was, it all would have happened at one time, the Civil War would have ended with the coup being successful right then and there. Now, on the other side of it, if the nationalist military, the moment the uprising, the moment the uprising happened, if the military would have stepped in instantaneously and just shut it down right then and there, went full ham on it, it would have ended the war early as well. So yeah, it shouldn't have lasted as long as it did. It went on from 36 to 39, I believe. Yeah, I believe it's 39. But it lasted way longer than it should have, to be honest. Another part of it that's kind of a fun fact is the death toll controversy on it. So the Spanish Civil War has a big controversy because if you look up the death toll for it, you're going to find every number from 100,000 up to 2 million. And it's because no one can agree on how many people actually died in the Spanish Civil War. And a lot of that's just there wasn't any information saved from then. Like it's I guess like there's just a lot of depicting results. Police siren. If you can hear a police siren, I'm sorry. I cannot control when a police car is going to drive by my house. And no amount of soundproofing is going to block out that siren. So yeah, there's a lot of deflecting information on death tolls, and a lot of that could also be you don't know, like, do you count refugee deaths? Do you count civilian deaths? Do you count like, do you count volunteer deaths from other countries? And a lot of countries sent volunteers. Mexico did not. Mexico sent cartridges of ammo, and they sent guns. Other nations actually sent like Germany sent tanks, aircraft. Italy actually got some naval experience out of it. They actually sunk convoys. And the funny thing is, there's actually a story. Italy's Italian submarines sunk some trading ships of Spain, and it came out. That's what happened. And Britain, UK actually covered for them and said that yeah, the piracy in the Mediterranean has been really bad. And I'm like, what? Like it's so they actually covered for them. That's how much they didn't want to escalate things into a war. They were trying to keep it. Yeah, let's just keep it local to Spain kind of situation. But yeah, everyone got experience, especially the air power, some ground forces. There's volunteers. There's actually some really famous people. I can't think of his name. There's a really famous person that fought in the Spanish Civil War as a volunteer, and maybe one day I'll make a topic out of him because he'd be really cool to talk about. Let's go ahead and go to our next topic. I know that one wasn't as deep as some of my other ones, but it's a large topic, and there's some other stuff that I'm gonna eventually pull out and kind of do a topic about within that topic. The German invasion of Denmark and Norway, which is a really fun one. So earlier, how I was talking about how German mustache man liked to send, ambassadors to talk about, they like to send ambassadors to talk to enemy, country leaders and tell them like, hey, just surrender. We're going to be coming in. You're not going to be able to stop us. Let's just, and a lot of times they'd be doing this like surrounded by like German guys with guns, like, yeah, just take the deal, like, yeah, they're maybe a little coerced into doing it. But that's pretty much what happened with Denmark. Germany invaded Denmark, and it lasted about 6 hours, and then Denmark surrendered. So when the invasion started, the very first thing they did was they took an airfield, and they got troops directly to the king of Denmark, the royalty of Denmark, the leaders, and they pretty much offered them the deal. You can surrender, and you'll be welcomed in as a puppet, government in Germany, and Germany won't actually own Denmark. It'll be a puppet nation. You'll join us. You'll be on our side. We're trying to protect you from Franco-British aggression, which you might think, oh, that's baloney. No, it's actually not. The UK, Churchill, believe it or not, Churchill himself, twice, I believe twice for Denmark and maybe twice for Norway. It's kind of a combination between, but he put proposals in to invade Denmark and Norway and to take their land. That way, they would be coming in to save them and protect them, their neutrality from German aggression. So just the other way around. So it's kind of both ways. But yeah, Germany invaded. The loss of life was really low though in the invasion of Denmark. It's not like the Germans again didn't have really any bad opinion toward them. There was some soldier deaths, not very many, and we did take out some planes and some bombers and stuff like that. Denmark had a ridiculously small air force, so like it was like one strafing run, and it was gone. So yeah, with Norway, and there was a small naval invasion with Denmark, not really that big, but man, the police sirens tonight. I'm sorry, guys. The one time all day today, I waited for a quiet moment to do a podcast, and yeah, I'm gonna try to edit that out. If you don't hear it at all, it's because I have phenomenal editing skills, and everything's worked out. But yeah. So Norway, Denmark invasion over really quick, 6 hours. They pretty much blitzkrieg rushed in. The government already surrendered. The troops were told to stand down. Yeah, it went really, really quick. I think I believe there was a small naval invasion. The main reason they wanted to take Denmark is because they wanted to get to Norway, and they wanted to get to Norway because they wanted to secure that Arctic area, and they wanted to kind of enclose Sweden and Finland, mainly Sweden because they got a lot of trade. They got steel, iron, things like that. They got natural resources from Sweden, so that was their big goal. But yeah, so that's why it happened. Well, the invasion of Norway landed in Oslo, and they took off, through from Denmark, went to the Fjord, I believe it's pronounced, and to Oslo, and kind of the same thing happened. They used paratroopers, they used the naval invasion, and the naval invasion was actually really fast. They didn't use troop transports like you would, like civilian convoy ships, stuff like that. They didn't use those. They actually used warships to transport troops, which means that the ships were faster and the naval invasion could happen quicker. And they pulled every resource they had for that naval invasion, like planes, bombers, every bit of the Navy, like all subs, every submarine, every U boat they had was involved with Norway because they had to make sure that those ships made it there. Nothing happened. And they landed in Oslo. There was actually UK troops not in Oslo, but in Narvik, I believe it's pronounced. There's another place. There's another port nearby, and they fought them there. And the UK troops actually won. They defeated the German forces that were attacking, but the UK troops had to pull out because Norway was gone. It was taken. Um, so yeah, that happened really quick. The royalty in Norway, they wanted to get them to surrender the same way they did Denmark because that way there would be no resistance, no governments in exile, that kind of situation. And that did not work out. The Norwegian king actually got to evacuate to the UK. And I believe even some of the Navy did too, like maybe a few ships. So he got to evacuate. That means the resistance got to stay up in Norway. And Norway had it bad. I believe at one point there was like 400,000 troops or something in Norway. There was a lot of troops up there. Norwegian resistance was really high, like really, really high. And it's sad because like Norwegian resistance was so high, but then Sweden maintained a neutrality through the entire thing. It's Sweden even opened its borders for like a couple of years after that, to where German soldiers, as long as they didn't come across as a military unit or as something like that, and as long as they just come across as an individual, they could travel to Sweden to enjoy the luxuries and things like that, like vacation time, like if you had leave, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's pretty much the invasion of Denmark and Norway. Happened really, really quick. Norway lasted longer than Denmark by far. But again, back to that Franco-British thing. Germany, they were invaded. I mean, if Germany never invaded, there's a good chance the UK, Britain would have invaded Norway. There's a really good chance of that because it actually got agreed. So the Churchill had a lot of these ideal, like appeals that he'd put in, like ideas. He had a lot that he put in about invading other countries for to keep them safe from other people's influences. And the only reason they didn't really want to do this is because uh, France and Britain did not want to look bad to other neutral countries at the time, like America. They didn't want to lose their support. Because, if you're trying to fight someone who's war hungry like Germany, how they're painting the picture, and then you start doing the same thing, it kind of makes you look, like the kettle calling, it black. You can't, it looks bad on you. So they didn't want to do that. But they did eventually finally agree to do it. And they accepted Churchill's opinion. They were going to invade Norway. And it didn't happen. So, because, obviously Germany beat them to the punch. So yeah, Germany moved in, secured Sweden, secured Finland. Sweden never abandoned their neutrality. Finland actually was in the Axis, but they only fought the Soviet Union at the time. Let's see what else we can get out of this topic bucket. This will be my longest podcast yet, guys. Looks like I'm drawing the last topic. Let's see what we got. This is going to be a shorter one. The Battle of Britain. So I've kind of talked about this before, and I figured out that I might actually be, spewing nonsense on some of this. So the Battle of Britain is whenever Germany wanted to do Operation Sea Lion, but Battle of Britain is pretty much the naval and air battle with Britain. So the U-boats were pretty much trying to cut off as much supply as they could to Britain, hurting them financially and resource-wise, and it also putting a strain on the civilians. While the air power, the Luftwaffe, wanted to bomb them, taking out key infrastructure, taking out fighter planes, pilots, things like that, hurting them as well. And when it first started out, they actually did not bomb civilian targets. And then as the raids went on, they actually started bombing civilian targets. Now, there is some controversy in the Battle of Britain because, like, there's that speech from Winston Churchill where he talks about the few. And the few is he's talking about, we're down to, the few. Whenever so much is owed to so few. And he's talking about the RAF pilots. And he pretty much, they were saying that there's not very many planes left, there's not very many pilots left. But then there's also other reports, when you look back, that there was plenty of planes. They were not producing more planes than they were losing, but they were also repairing planes and putting planes back in action. So they had plenty of planes, and the pilot count has been shown to actually increase in around that time period whenever this operation was going on. So they believe they had 1,000 pilots, and by the end of before the operation ended, they were up to 1,400 pilots. So again, a lot of controversy. I would have to really dive deep into this to figure out which way it's true. So either there wasn't very many planes and there wasn't very many pilots, or there was plenty and there was plenty. So yeah, I will say this though, Germany was taking out more planes than Britain was taking out planes of Germany. And they were doing really good work overall. The bombings were successful. They were taking out planes. And eventually it just got called off because Germany thought that, they were not winning. They were not, taking out enough resources, taking out enough planes. They thought eventually they would never be able to do a naval invasion. And they thought that, that Britain would never surrender. And they believed that the only reason that Britain was holding out was because of support from like the USA and things like that. That's kind of like what their thought process was on it. So yeah, this is kind of a short one for Battle of Britain, but just kind of an interesting thing. I will dive deeper into this. I kind of want to know. And also just with this whole today's topics, I mean, I've kind of Winston Churchill, man. Like, I mean, I've always known he was very pro Britain, and he did great things, and he was a great speech maker. But at the same time, I mean, he was very almost nationalist for Britain. Like some of his ideas were pretty extreme, I would say. So, yeah, that's all my topics. I want to tell everyone thank you for checking out the podcast, listening. If you could, please leave a review. If you listen to this on Audible, you can leave a review on there. If not, give it a follow, give it a like, give it anything. Share it to your friends, your family, anybody you think that would have an interest in World War II history or just history in general. I am eventually going to move on to other topics and things to talk about. And I am still looking for a guest. Check out my TikTok, my YouTube, DOS Bear. Other than that, y'all have a great rest of the week, and I will see y'all for episode 5.